a fractional HR consulting firm that is focused on solving the problems that keep owners awake at night. Effective HR helps more than 350 first or second generation family businesses with 10 to 200 employees and between 1 million and 50 million in revenue overcome their distressing HR issues using their unique approach called fractional HR. This allows employers to apply specific expertise at the right time, with the right resources, and at the right price. Rick became a TAB member in 2009. So Rick, if you are ready, I will hand it over to you.
Great, thank you, Julie. So hi, everybody. So my name is Rick Moore, and an important thing to kind of kick off this presentation as we talk about employee productivity and how to deal with it. Because we work with first or second generation family businesses and, a couple of handfuls to several hundred employees, million to 50 million in revenue, we've gotten to speak to lots of business owners. And the growth, we have about 32 HR folks that work for us. The growth has come because of issues like this. How do they get their employees to think like them? Right, so that was the genesis of this. So quite frankly, when I'm in my TAB board meeting or dealing with other business owners, these are very common themes that come up for most employers, and how to deal with them. So I'm going to try to give you some kind of different ideas today. I'm going to take about 15 to 20 minutes to go through my presentation. It looks like I have a chat function here. So we have a chat function. So if there are any questions, please chat at any time that you would like. And Julie will field those questions and flag me down and make sure that we get those answered as soon as possible. So with that said, we're going to jump into the presentation and kind of how we're going to take this from a different approach. So what do companies, let's think about this, companies that are struggling with employee productivity, it's usually because they don't have a plan, right? And where we hear this stuff manifest itself, when we know there's a productivity problem, we hear owners speaking in really 6 buckets of problems, right? Because the company's struggling with 6 things. And one thing that has to do with employee productivity is they talk about recruitment, right? So I have 20 employees, but I can only really rely on one. The other 19 are not as productive as I'd like them to be, right? So there's a productivity issue. The other way, another way is legal and compliance matters, right? So there's so many laws, rules, regulations, and really they're all designed to put leaders of businesses in jeopardy or in hot water in some way, shape, manner, or form, whether that's fines and fees or a whole host of other things. But when they talk about, hey, I can't do something or I can't make my people do it because I'm afraid from a legal and compliance perspective, that adds to the lack of productivity that most employers are feeling. Next, compensation and benefits, right? So very simply, everyone always wants more. They're the only capital in your business that comes in and asks for more. And many times that conversation kind of focuses around the owner saying, hey, my people want more, but I'm not getting more from them. They're not as productive as I want them to be. So it's another way that it manifests itself. Strategic HR support. So think about the natural progression of many businesses, many TAB businesses. We all start very small in our basement, in our garage, in a small office, something like that. And it's usually 1 or 2 people, family member, friend, etc. And as the business grows, those family and friends that were willing to do anything for you, they can't do it the same way. You have to bring in outside people. So how do you bring in the right outside people so that they think and act and are as productive as those original people that may share your same last name or went to the same high school with you, or just look at you as a different person than just some person that pays their paycheck every 2 weeks. Policies and procedures. A lot of times when clients call us in, they're asking, hey, we need a handbook and we need job descriptions. And it's the conversation is always, okay, we understand you need, tell us why. Well, I can't get them to do what I want them to do. I can't get them to come to work on time. I can't get them to stop, politicking behind each other's back. So I want policies and procedures. But really, in many instances, what they're asking for is, how do I make my employees more productive? And then, kind of, I guess the most simple one is performance and development. Why can't my people think and act and work the same way that I do? How do I get them to be as productive as I am? And a lot of times that's around performance management and training and all those sorts of things. So really, companies without a plan, an HR plan, if you will, they struggle with compliance. They struggle with productivity. And these are the areas that they seem to manifest themselves. So that's at the company level. So let's talk about the leaders, the folks that I think are on this phone call, right? So you saw when you logged on, you saw a picture of a person sitting on the top of a mountain, their freedom. So I always tell a quick little story that remember the day that you decided to start your own business. And we all have that day, and we went home and we went somewhere and we told some significant other, a spouse, a friend, a parent, a son, a daughter, someone. And we said, this is going to be great. I'm going to own my own company. And I'm going to be free to do whatever it is I want to do. Climb mountains, go on boats, get healthy, play golf, have a fat bank account, or never ask anyone for permission ever again. But when companies or business leaders have employees that are disengaged and not productive, the freedom that they thought they were going to have is actually, they're less free than when they work for somebody. They have to get to work earlier. They leave later. They're in every meeting. It's all of this stuff of disengaged or non-productive employees are taking away the very freedom that those business owners thought that they were going to get by opening their own business. The other thing we see as a symptom for business leaders that have disengaged or non-productive employees, they lose their passion, the owner does. And they lose their passion because they're sick of doing it all. And you can only do it so long before you say, I can't do this anymore. The simple thought that comes to my mind is we've all read, the E-Myth by Michael Gerber and the story of the woman in the bake shop. That's kind of what happens to a lot of businesses. They struggle to grow. I can only do so many things in a 24-hour day. So if my employees are not being the productive people that I want them to be, the business is going to stay stagnant. So how do I get them to be better? Decision-making becomes tougher, right? Because, well, it's really Johnny's job to do it, but he's basically useless, so I have to ask Sally. Sally has, her own things going on, so it makes decision-making tougher. And then really, the disengaged employees or the non-productive employees, the owner's family members get ticked off because they're missing things that they shouldn't be missing, right? They have to work late, etc. The customers, well, that's very simple to understand. The customers are not getting the customer service experience that we all promised them. And the employees are ticked off because the good ones are doing all the work of the bad ones, right? So for a business leader that has non-productive employees or disengaged employees, it really kind of hits home on a personal level. So that's from the business owner's standpoint. For the employees, right? Let's talk about what a disengaged or non-productive employee does. Well, they seem to have what we define as the 15-minute meeting. So let me give you an example. I'm supposed to be working at 9 o'clock. But what do I really do? I kind of stroll into the office about 4 or 5 minutes after 9 o'clock. Then by the time I get to my desk, I put my bag down, I turn on my computer. Now I'm going to go put my lunch away and make coffee, and I run into my coworkers. We have what's called a 15-minute meeting. How was the weekend? How are the kids? What's going on in your life? Blah, blah, blah. And that 15-minute meeting is very expensive because it's a clear sign of employees that are not being productive and disengaged, right? So, so think about this. There's a million stats. You can look them up on the internet, etc. But here's a basic sample. If one employee who makes $50,000 a year has a 15-minute meeting, as I just described, one time per day, that costs the business in productivity about $1,500 a year. All right, so let that sink in. So let's take that same employee who came in about 4 or 5 minutes after 9 because they're not being productive and disengaged. They do that at 9:05. Then at about 10:45, it's time to have another cup of coffee, right? I have one there. Then at about 11:30, 11:45, I start asking people what they want to do for lunch. So that's a whole conversation right there. Then at about 2:30, 2:45, it's time for the afternoon coffee run. And then since I leave at 5, about 4:40, 4:15, I start shutting down and seeing how everyone else and what everyone else is doing for the evening. So if you think about it, that disengaged or unproductive employee is probably not having one 15-minute meeting a day. They're probably having 4 or 5. Think about that cost. Each one of those each day throughout the course of a year is $1,500. So if they have 4 of them a day, that's costing you $6,000 a year in productivity costs. It's huge, right? So you guys get that point. That's not my job. Great sign of someone who's not being productive and disengaged. When's my vacation? So guys, one of the things I talk to a lot of business owners about is, if you think about it as a business leader, our job is to think about us, ours, and we, right? Our company, we're going to do this, right? So on and so forth. The employee's job, quite frankly, is to think about them. I, me, and mine. When's my vacation? That's not my job. You know, when am I going to get a raise, right? So they're set up to be naturally disengaged or less productive than the business owner because we just take things from a different angle. And then the boss always changes direction, right? You hear that. It's kind of an excuse. So we don't have to beat that one to death, but you guys get it. So what is the cost to the business owner when they have disengaged or unproductive employees, right? You can see these things: growth, freedom, happiness, cash flow, scalability. And the biggest thing to me, and I think we talk about this a lot, certainly in TAB and other places, is sellability, right? And I think I made that word up, but that's why it's in quotes. But if I'm going to sell my business the way that I really want it to be, what it looks like is this. At some point in time, someone comes to me and says, Rick, we want to buy your business and we value it at X. Here's the check for X, assuming I agree. Thanks for playing. Go away. We have it from here, right? Why? Because the team is developed properly, so they don't need me on everything. My teams are engaged. They're being productive. The wrong kind of thing, what most business owners face when they try to sell their business or thinking about selling their business, is they say, I do everything. My employees are, in my mind, worthless. I'll talk about why we would think that, and I think it's a wrong view, but it really hinders when you have disengaged employees the biggest sale we as business owners will ever make, right? So it'll be bigger than any prospect or any client we've ever had as a client. When we sell our business, ideally, it's the biggest sale we have ever made. So companies that have disengaged employees or non-productive employees, their sellability is damaged alongside those other 5 things that you see listed there.
And Rick, we did have a question come in.
Yep.
So Vasily was kind of wondering, is there when you consider talking about employee productivity and not having extra conversations, is there anything to the argument that an employee might be more productive if they are allowed to have, some of those extra conversations throughout the day?
Yeah, I mean, listen, so to take it to the extreme to create the example, we should never limit, productive conversation around business, right? And we're all people, so we're going to have conversations about the kids and the family and the friends and the weekend and all that kind of stuff. So those things are important. But where I suggest it goes off the rails is when they become, overly, not about business. And what I would say is one of the greatest traits that any employee can have to judge if they're truly productive and stuff is their curiosity, right? Curiosity is one of the things we measure because one, it helps build stronger relationships, when you're curious. Curious people tend to be more bold. So they're open to having really good, ideas and bringing them to the leaders of the business, say, hey, I have an idea, right? And curiosity, it allows for a healthy workforce because you should be curious. How was the weekend? That's a curious question. What I'm suggesting is those things should not be shut down, but clearly, they should be, engaged employees are going to do a little bit of it, but not to the extent where they're trying to get out of work. And what I would say is curious people are much more likely to make genuine efforts to get to know each other, right? Because that there is that good employee bond, and that should be encouraged. But there comes a point in time where that great curiosity which is one of the best traits of employees, can become not for purposes of helping move forward and genuineness, but rather how to avoid doing work and getting out of things.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. I hope that made sense. I just said a mouthful there. So, okay, so the cost of disengaged employees. All right, great. Oh, then I go backwards. Sorry. Let me go forward one more time. So for companies that want to avoid people who are disengaged and non-productivity, they should have an HR plan. Let's call it, for lack of a better terms, a human capital plan, right? So you want to know how to make these folks better. So let's think about this. When you have a disengaged or a non-productive employee, the chances of them bringing some sort of action against you or the business are tremendously increased because they're disengaged. They don't care, right? So, I'm being discriminated against for some reason, or the boss doesn't like me, or, whatever it may be. And if a business is not buttoned up from that standpoint, those people are very quick to create problems. So if you've ever had a Department of Labor letter or a nasty gram from someone's attorney, you know what this means. It's not a pleasant day. The second thing that companies that are struggling to get their people to be more engaged and more productive is, what are the things that make the company run better, right? So it could be the employee, and make the company run better and set the rules for the employees. So it could be the handbook. It could be the job description. It could be how you do your performance management. It could be all of those things. So looking at a plan, a human capital plan, from major issues so that the company runs better, people are more productive, is an important thing. The next thing, employee issues, culture tied to landmines. So what I would say here is, when we talk to business owners who do not have a productive workforce in their mind, usually we say something, we ask a few questions, how do employees like, oh, my employees love working here. They've been here for 20 years. They think I am the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, when we get under the hood and we start doing some surveys of various people, of employees, we find out that it is the exact opposite. So having someone understand why you're having productivity concerns or why things are not happening, it can't come from the business owner who thinks that they know everything that's going on and that the employees love them, because I'm going to pretty much make a blanket statement, and I won't call it a guarantee because that's a little too extreme, but I can make a pretty good statement that most employees do not feel the same way about our business as we do, hence the productivity challenge. Strategic, so the right people on the bus in the right seats. A lot of times productivity is, or lack of productivity is because we didn't hire properly. We didn't develop out the job properly. We didn't do the training properly. A multitude of things. But if we don't have the right people on the bus, and more importantly, in the right seats, we're destined to have a workforce that is not working up to our expectations. This is a big issue. There's a lot of things that go underneath it. It's more than we can get into on a 15 or 20-minute educational webinar, but certainly very companies that are struggling with productivity concerns, that's a big thing. The freedom or happiness of the leaders, right? This is kind of a catch-22, chicken before the egg, conundrum, whatever you want to call it. We thought we were going to be happy as clams when we started our business. And for the most of us, there are some times of real misery. And, you know, is it us that's miserable that then the employees see that and they become miserable? Or is it they're making us miserable, now we're miserable? I would say in some cases it's, you know, sometimes it's us that makes them miserable and vice versa. But if there's unhappiness in you because your business isn't growing the way you want it to, it's usually tied back to, in simplistic terms, some level of unproductivity or disengagement by the employees. So to kind of get all these things together, how do you build and structure the organization to limit productivity challenges or disengagement? You need a project plan. Someone needs to understand everything that's going on at the business from a human capital perspective. Human capital, think of your machinery capital. Human capital is just that. We're machines in the business. Someone has to know exactly what needs to be done and in exactly what order and exactly why they need to be done so that the productivity gains can be, the productivity challenges can be limited. All right. So what should a strategic HR plan review, especially when you're dealing with productivity issues and disengagement? So one is the compliance stuff, right? So I kind of touched on this before. If you have compliance issues, you want to get those cleaned up in advance because non-productive employees don't care about your business. And they're the ones that'll say, I hate Joe anyway. I'm gonna go to a lawyer and have them send a letter, or I'm going to the Department of Labor because I knew this was wrong. So those people are more likely to create those kinds of challenges, and these are some of the areas that we see those things come up. So we never get, when we get involved in a business and they say, oh, I got a letter from an attorney, and it's from, Johnny Smith was the ex-employee. Well, how was Johnny? Did he like working here? Was it good? No, he was a jerk. I hated him. He hated me. I couldn't get him to do anything. It's almost like it's coming if you have disengaged or non-productive employees. So yep.
Sorry, we had one more question come in.
Go ahead.
And I apologize if I say this wrong, but Gurjeet has asked, he said that he missed something that you said, and he was asking if you said some unhappiness is due to leadership being unproductive.
So many times it does start with leadership. So let me give you a simplistic example. Hopefully I'm clear on this point. It's hard to read body language and make sure that we're connecting on this, but think about it this way. When we design a job in our business, we want to have key accountabilities, we want to have a job description, we want to have everything that these people are going to be judged on. We want to have, call it the guide rails of the highway laid out for them so they know exactly what they need to do. They have clear expectations of how they're going to be judged, if you will, and clear expectations of what the definition of success is. So why I say sometimes as leaders we fail is many times we say, oh, we need a bookkeeper. Get me a bookkeeper. Oh, here's a bookkeeper. You're our new bookkeeper. But we really haven't set the rules of what they're going to be judged on. So a few months later, we start asking the bookkeeper to answer the phones, right? Or we ask them to take customer calls. And we haven't set the guide rails straight enough so that they understand exactly what they're going to be doing. And as leaders, I think that's a failure on our behalf. And in small businesses, it's difficult because we have people wearing many hats. But if we don't clearly set out what the game plan is, it's very hard for the employees to follow it. And more importantly, it becomes very easy for us to pick out where they are not following it. So, so that's where that came from.
All right, thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, so how to judge the employees and their issues. So anonymous, the employee survey, right? What's a net promoter score? So you as a business owner, if you're suspecting that you have employees that are not truly engaged, it can't come from you. It has to come from an outside source. They won't trust you, but there should be an anonymous employee survey that asks several kinds of questions, maybe 8 to 10. But 2 of the main ones should be net promoter scores. So something like this. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being great and 10 being no way, how likely would you be to recommend a family friend or friend or family member to work here, right? That's a net promoter score. Another one might be on a scale of 1 to 10, if you were offered the same job, same distance from your home, same salary, same title, same benefits, same, how likely would you be to take it? Those 2 kinds of questions, net promoter score questions, will tell you a lot about the culture and what the employees, how they are engaged and how they are not engaged. Behavioral analysis of the team. We use DISC, there's millions, there's Myers-Briggs and all those kinds of things, but each job should have a behavioral analysis. And to make it very simple, we actually, with our clients, we have a system called the 5 C's of performance, where employees each month do a 5-question 360 review of everyone they touch. And it's focused on these 5 behavioral traits. 1 is consistent. 2, cooperative. 3, are you committed? 4, are you conscientious? And 5, are you curious? So we use that, and many other organizations do that too, so that they can judge where people are, why they are, or why they are not engaged. So you can do that sort of stuff. Organizational development. How were we built, right? So think about the typical business we talked about earlier. We started in the house and we developed, and it was all family and friends, and now all of a sudden we have all these strangers. That's a big jump. So how that organization is put together is going to add or subtract from your productivity. All right. So how should it be done? I kind of talked about this. You should have an outsider do it. They should take an approach of art and science. So there's some very hard facts and figures and things and services that could be measured against. And then there's the artistic side of it, which is, hey, people are people, and sometimes we have to approach them that way. So art and science is a great combination of how this productivity problem should be dealt with. A process. Someone needs to ask the right questions and in the right order, right? And then to analyze it. So how do you digest that information so that what you get is clear and understandable and hasn't missed anything and makes sense? And then the report. Who are you going to have write it, and is it proven? You want this roadmap, if you will, of how to engage your employees and make them as productive as possible. And then 6 is a project plan. How do you make it actionable, right? So you guys understand that. I don't have to beat that thing to death. So really that's it. That is kind of, we're up on it on time. Wanted to give you some ideas of what the symptoms are of disengaged or non-productive employees, and kind of concepts to think about so that you can engage them or find a way to engage them and make them more productive. So I really thank you for listening. I'll answer any questions. If anyone wants to contact me for specific questions, you see our phone number down there at the bottom and our website, so you can always contact us or get to Julie. So I open it up to questions.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Like you mentioned, if you do have something, feel free, type it into the question box and we'll take care of it. I actually had a question. Is there a way that that you can kind of put a score maybe on how productive people are? Because I'm sure there's got to be a, a way to determine, someone who's really, really productive, someone who's just a little bit, not productive, just so you can kind of see on how to work on that.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Big question. So, well, small question, big answers. So, I think what we're really talking about is how do we unlock people's potential? And really, it starts with how do we define the role of the job that we're hiring for and putting people into? Right, that's one thing. Let's call that the hard skills. But more importantly, how do we design the behavioral style and how do we assess for that? So when this person comes on board, my chances of having that truly engaged employee are terrific. So let me give you a quick example. Most business owners hire for skill set and fire on behavior, right? So what does that mean? So I needed a salesperson. So I put out an ad for a salesperson. I got a salesperson. They were a salesperson in my competitor's company, so they know what they're doing, right? After 6 months, I hate them. I hate them as a human being. They're rude, they're nasty, they're jerks, right? So I end up firing that person on their behavior, right? It had nothing to do with their resume or their skill set. So what we suggest is a not simple, but as a good first step is when you're designing and hiring people to work in your business, don't only look at the hard skills, but look at the behavioral styles. I mentioned DISC before because that's what we use. So that's kind of at the beginning. So at the end, or when they're there, we use what we call the 5 C's of performance, and we actually put a score and measure it month by month against their peers. And we call it the 5 C's of performance. And those 5 C's, again, are how consistent is your coworker? How cooperative are they? How committed are they to the company? How conscientious are they? And how curious are they? So when people know that they're being measured by their peers on their behavior, how they interact with each other, clients, etc., it's no different than Weight Watchers. If I know that I have to step on the scale every Tuesday, well, on the Friday before, I may not have that ice cream or that pizza because I know I have to step on the scale. So same thing, this is kind of like stepping on the scale. If I know that I'm going to be measured by my peers each month, I may, instead of snapping at them when they ask me to do something, I may handle them a little bit differently, which pervades the whole organization, customer service experience, all kinds of things.
All right, thank you. As a follow-up to that, a lot of the TAB members and people that are looking at TAB are small business owners or medium-sized business owners, and they tend to have lots of people who are doing lots of different things and have different functions within their companies. So how would you score their productivity or maybe their engagement when they have so many different tasks and functions?
So I think and that's a very common thing. So I kind of mentioned this before as the example. I have my bookkeeper doing the books, answering the phones when the receptionist is not around and dealing with client issues, right? So to sum it, I think that people with curious behavioral styles in those situations are more willing to do more things, to be more involved, and to be genuine about it. And that's really what a small business owner wants when they're hiring somebody. This really goes to don't just hire on skill set, but hire for behavior as well. So in those cases, you want specific behavioral styles, you want specific skill sets, and specific behavioral styles because you're going to be asking people many different things. So for instance, we just know some people say, I just give me my job and I want to do it from 8 to 5 and I'm going home. Well, that's a behavioral style. They may be good at their job, but is that the behavioral style that you want in your business? So we can interview for you can interview for those sorts of things, and you can measure that with various assessments. But you can also and should be measuring it as they go along using tools like I mentioned, the 5 Cs, like other performance management programs that are out there. There are a whole host of ways, but it's got to be pulled together with a specific strategic HR plan.
All right, thank you. And we have one more question right now, so if you do want to ask Rick something, be sure to go ahead and type it in right now. But Vasily has asked, how do you find out which personality types are appropriate for specific positions? Our approach has been to take personality surveys of those who are great for a job and try to find replicas. Is there a better way?
Well, I think those are a good first step. Those sound like a good first step. What we really focus on is, what are the key accountabilities of this job, right? So if they were to do, let's say you have 3 to 5 key accountabilities for every job, to make a joke about it, if they were to do those 3 to 5 things really well, you'd almost forgive them if they were an axe murderer, right? So there's one level. The second thing is, when interviewing, asking behavioral questions, right? So I know what the behavior I want, but how do I ask those things on an interview? So for instance, what most people say is, so where did you work last? Oh, I worked at the Smith Group. That's not a great interview question. A great interview question, let's say, especially in a small business, you have people that are tasked to do many different things, right? So you may ask, so tell me about a time when you couldn't get everything done that you were supposed to. How did you deal with it? Or tell me about a time when you were given a project and you were in charge of it, but it was something you've never done before. How did you handle it? Those kinds of questions. So I think taking the assessment, measuring to the assessment with with behaviorals, with key accountabilities of that job, and then yes, staying on task of finding that person that fits those same things is a very good course, if you will.
All right, we had one more come in from Kelly, and she's wondering, how do you re-engage non-productive employees?
Well, it really is, it's a big plan, and I would call that organizational development and how you re-engage them. And some people might not just be the right people. So let me ask everyone to draw in their mind's eye an XY axis grid. And on the Y-axis going up and down, you have on the top left great company values, meaning the employee has great company values, and on the bottom the employee has bad company values. On the X-axis, on the lower left-hand quadrant, they're a poor performer and then a high performer. So low performer with low company values, you put an X. They're simple. You get rid of them. So if that person is there, they may just have to go. The high performer with high company values, they're superstars. You want to keep them. You love them. They're great. If you can find 5 more of them, you'd be the happiest person in the world. Then you have people with high company values but are low performing. We call them puppies. They can be trained, right? High company values means they're great employees. They work hard. They're good to their teammates. They're good to the clients. They just need to be trained up more. They're puppies. You keep them. The most difficult one, I forgot the name of the person who asked the question, but the most difficult one, guys, is the person who's high performing but has low company values. We call them a terrorist. That person drives everyone crazy. And the leader of the business goes, I'd love to get rid of Johnny, but he's such a jerk to everybody, but boy, is he really kicking tail in his job. So I guess the moral of that story is, think about where those people fit in. And some of them, it's an easy idea, just get rid of them. Some of it's easy just to, they're the superstars. Some could be trained because they're good. They're working hard. They're doing the right stuff, but they just need training. And others, those terrorists, they may just have to go.
All right, so we did have another question come in from Frank. He says, skilled trades like the painting and wall covering trade are slim and hard to find. What do you suggest on recruiting skilled trades such as ours?
So, yeah, you're right. It is a difficult thing, and typically those are seasonal types of businesses, and they are businesses that, or they are jobs that, those are people that tend to be transient within those businesses. So we've done a lot of things with people like that. Think of drivers and movers and glass glaziers, kind of a similar type of thing, same type of person. So really, that's a whole recruiting thing. But to make it simple just for this conversation, one, define those key accountabilities, right? Define the behavioral style, right? Then it makes it easier, not easy, easier to go find them, right? So in those businesses, landscaping and all those kinds of businesses, there's always one or two people that are great. They've been a while, they're just relied upon. So back to an earlier conversation, how do you take that person and clone them and find those people? And I think one of the biggest challenges, Frank, for businesses like that, painters and semi-skilled labor, is there's always this balance between I need people fast because I just got a huge job and I need the right person. So that's kind of a balancing act that we would look at with folks in those businesses and say, okay, what's the level of, I need 10 people tomorrow, and if they can fog a mirror, I want them to work for me. That's typically how it's done in that industry versus, hey, I need 4 long-term people who are going to be with me, who are the right kinds of people. And they are out there. They're just, it's how we define the position and what we're looking for and its time frame.
Okay. And Richard has asked, should most positions have an incentive program? Couldn't you affect the terrorist personalities by incentivizing them to build desirable behavior?
So Richard, that was Richard, I'm sorry?
Yes, Richard.
Okay. So incentive, what most business owners think of as incentive, or what I've encountered when they talk about incentive, is they're talking about money, right? Which we as business owners typically are motivated by money in some way because that's why we're doing what we do, I think. So, which is all well and good, but we project our values many times onto our employees, and in many cases it's wrong. So for instance, if you take the customer service agent and you offer them a bonus each time they do a good deed, that's typically not what's motivating them, right? So that's an incentive, right? So if you're talking about, if I give money to everybody, will they do more? The answer is, I'm going to say emphatically no. Going back to behavioral styles and motivators, DISC, Myers-Briggs, those kinds of things, Richard, what I would say is when you look at the position and you hire for that skill set and that behavior, there are people, I will tell you, people in our organization where we had to call them up and say, can you cash your check, please? Because they weren't motivated by money. What they were motivated for is they wanted us to tell them, boy, you're doing a great job. I got to tell you, the clients love you. We all love you. You're terrific, and so on and so forth. And in that instance, those people, that's what motivates them. So very quick, simple example, in effective HR, our 32 HR folks, about 95% of them are what we call ISs in the DISC scale. They're not motivated by money. They're motivated by doing a good job and being recognized for doing a good job. So if I were to offer them money as an incentive, I would not get the results that I would hope if I was offered money for an incentive. But when I offer them an incentive of pats on the back and attaboys and good job, I get a tremendously different result. So long story short, incentive in general, yes, but it has to be the right incentive, meaning money or whatever it may be. Understanding those people's behavioral styles and motivators will get you a better result.
Okay, thank you. And John has asked, what's the best way to determine the relative value of an employee? How is that quantified and why?
Whew, that's a good one. So I guess the simple one is it's simply if you're in a line manufacturing company, right, or a sales role, measuring productivity is simple, right? I produce X number of widgets per hour, right? Or in sales, I bring in X number of sales each month, whatever it may be. Those are very simple ones. But the other ones where, maybe it's the administrative assistant role or the bookkeeper's role, measuring productivity could be set up in those key accountabilities and the early job description, right? What am I going to be measured on? What are my goals? So for those more roles that don't have a very easy to find measurement, that sort of thing, I would also encourage you look at things. I'm going to say that there's others out there, so I'm not using mine as, kind of, hey, we got, but the 5 C's of performance, there are other kinds of systems out there, excuse me, that are relatively inexpensive that can help you quantify employees' productivity on a number scale, specifically with measurements against each month and each year and all those sorts of things.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Rick. That seems to be all of our questions. But
Right.
if you do happen to think of something, like he mentioned, his website and phone number are up on the screen right now. And you can check out all of our previous BOSS webinars on demand by visiting our website and clicking on webinars. And in that exact same spot, you can also register for our upcoming webinar on July 12th about employee retention issues. So once you get those employees to be productive, you can learn how to keep them. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.